My mother said she had nowhere else to go. My wife said if she moves in, I'm gone. 23 years of marriage, and I had about a week to decide.
This is Michael Tells, and this is Recorded for Me. I've been sitting on this one for 2 days, not because it's hard to listen to, because I don't know what I'd have done, and I usually know. Let's hear it together.
Michael. I'm going to say up front that this one doesn't have an ending. I know that's not usually how these go. If you need a story that wraps up, this isn't it, and you can delete this now and I won't mind. But I don't have anybody to say it to. That's the situation I'm in. So, my name's Greg. I'm 49. 3 years ago, my mother asked to move in with us, and my wife told me it was her or my mother. And I want to tell you what I did, and what it cost, and what I found out afterward, and then you can decide what it was. Some background so this makes sense. I've been married to Renee for 23 years. We got married in 2003. I was 26, she was 24. We've got one daughter, Caitlin. She's 19. She's away at school now. And we were fine. I want that on the record because of where this goes. We were a good marriage. Not perfect, nobody's perfect, but good. 20 years of good. My dad died in 2019, heart. And my mother, Barbara, everybody called her Barb, she was 72 then, and she stayed in that house alone for about 2 years, and it wasn't working. Big house, bad knees, stairs. She stopped driving at night. Then she stopped driving. And in the spring of 2021, she called me and asked if she could come live with us. And she said, and I want you to hear this exact sentence because it turns out to be important. She said, Greg, I don't have anywhere else to go. So I told Renee that night. And I wasn't asking her permission, honestly. I thought it was a formality. I thought we'd talk about which room, whether we needed a ramp, that kind of thing. And Renee said no. Not let's think about it. No. Flat. And I said something like, come on, she's my mother. What am I supposed to do? And Renee said, and this is where it went off a cliff. She said, Greg, if that woman moves into this house, I'm not going to be in it. Her or me. In those words, more or less. And I lost it. I'm not proud of that. I said some things that were unfair. I called her cold. I said, what kind of person watches a 74-year-old woman have nowhere to go? I said, if it was your mother, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. And she took it. She just sat there and took all of it. And then we didn't really speak for about 4 days. Okay, so here's the first thing I didn't know. About a week into this, we're in the kitchen, it's late, we're going around again, and Renee stops and she gets very quiet and she says, I need to tell you something and I need you to not interrupt me. And she told me that in 2008, when Caitlin was about a year old, and Renee was in a bad way then, she had postpartum depression. It was genuinely bad. She was barely functioning for about 8 months. She told me that my mother came over one afternoon while I was at work, and they were in the kitchen. And Renee was crying, apparently about nothing, the way you do when you're in that. And my mother said to her, my son deserved better than this. Renee said she stood there holding our baby, and she couldn't even respond. And she never told me. 13 years. She never told me. And I asked her why, and she said, because you'd have had to pick, and I wasn't going to make you pick over one sentence. Now, I want to be honest about my reaction, because it's the part I'm least proud of in this whole thing. I didn't believe her. Not fully. That's the truth. I mean, I believed she believed it, but my first instinct, my actual first instinct, was that she'd misheard or misremembered, or that it was 13 years ago and she was in a bad state, and maybe it came out different than my mother meant. That's what I did. My wife told me something that had been sitting in her for 13 years, and my first move was to look for a way it wasn't true. I've thought about that a lot since. So I went and asked my mother. I drove over there on a Saturday, and I sat in her kitchen and I said, Mom, did you say something to Renee back when Caitlin was a baby? And she said, what? And I told her, word for word. And she looked at me and she said, I don't remember that. And I said, okay. And I almost left it there. But something made me push. And I said, do you remember it and you don't want to say, or do you actually not remember it? And she got that face. If you had my mother, you know the face. And she said, Greg, I don't know. That was a long time ago, and she was being very difficult back then. That's what she said. She was being very difficult back then. Not, I'd never say that. Not, I'm sorry if I did. Just, well, she was being difficult. And I sat in that kitchen and something went cold in me. Because that was as good as an admission, and it came with a shrug attached. My wife, who was sick, holding our daughter. Difficult. And here's where you're going to lose respect for me, and I've made peace with that. I moved her in anyway. 6 weeks later, downstairs bedroom, we put in a rail in the bathroom, the whole thing. And I can tell you exactly why, and none of the reasons are good enough. Because she was 74, and she said she had nowhere to go. Because my father was gone, and I was the one who was left. Because, and this is the real one, because I could not picture myself as a man who says no to that. I could picture myself as a man with a strained marriage. I could not picture myself as a man who left his mother with nowhere. So I chose the version of myself I could live with. That's what I actually chose. Not her, me. And Renee didn't leave. That surprised me, honestly. She said her or me. And then my mother's furniture came, and Renee just stayed. And I remember feeling relieved, like I'd gotten away with it. I hadn't gotten away with anything. Because what happened instead was that my wife went quiet. Not angry, not cold even, not exactly. She was polite to my mother. 20 months, and I never once heard her be rude. She'd ask her if she needed anything, she'd make her plate, but she stopped talking to me. I don't mean silent treatment, I mean the actual talking stopped. The stuff at 11 at night, the stupid conversations, you know how in a marriage there's this constant low hum of nothing talk? That's the marriage. That's what it's made of. That stopped. And what was left was logistics. Trash night. Caitlin's tuition. Did you call the plumber? And my mother, in the meantime, was exactly what Renee said she'd be. Little things. She'd reorganize Renee's kitchen. She'd comment on what Caitlin was wearing. She told Renee once, in front of me, that the house could use a woman who's home more. Renee works. Renee has always worked. And every time I'd say something to my mother afterward, quietly, and she'd say I was being sensitive, and nothing would change. And I'd look at Renee, and she'd look back at me with this expression that wasn't even angry. It was just, I told you, and I love you, and I told you. Caitlin was 17, 18 during this, and she saw all of it. She said something to me once, right before she left for school. She said, "Dad, why does Mom look like that all the time now?" And I didn't have an answer for my kid. My mother had a stroke in the summer of 2023, recovered partly, then a second one that fall, and that was it. She was 76, and I grieved her. I want to say that clearly because of what comes next. She was my mother. I loved her. I sat with her at the end, and I miss her. All of that is true at the same time as the rest. About 2 months after, I was going through her papers, boxes in our garage, taxes, insurance, the usual mess, and I found 3 letters from my sister Sandy. Sandy lives 2 states away. She and my mother were never as close. Mom found her difficult too. Apparently that was a category she used a lot. The letters were dated 2020 and 2021, all 3 before my mother called me. And they were all the same letter, basically. Sandy asking her to come live with them, describing the room, saying they'd already cleared it out. One of them says, I've got it here, I've read it about 400 times. It says, "Mom, the offer stands. The room is ready. You just have to say the word." The last one is dated 4 months before my mother called me and told me she had nowhere else to go. She had somewhere to go. She had a room, cleared out, 2 states away, waiting for her. And she never mentioned it. Not once. Not when I asked if there were other options. And I did ask, early on. I asked her directly. She said no. She said there was nothing. I've thought about why for 3 years now, and I've only got one answer that holds up. Sandy would have said no to her. Sandy would have set rules. Sandy would have told her to stop making comments about somebody's kitchen. And I wouldn't. And she knew that. 60-some years of being my mother, she knew exactly which one of her kids couldn't say no to her. So she picked me. And it cost me my marriage. I'm going to be accurate. It cost me most of my marriage. And she knew there was another room, and she let me pay for hers. So, where's it at now? Renee and I are still married. 3 years since my mother passed. We're fine. We're civil. We go to dinner. We went to Caitlin's parents' weekend together, and we were good. We laughed. But that hum I told you about, it never came back. It's been 5 years now since it was really there. Some nights I sit across from her and it feels like we're two people who used to know each other very well. And I've never told her about the letters. 3 years. They're in a drawer in my desk and my wife has no idea they exist. And I don't know why I haven't. I've told myself it's to protect her, which is nonsense. It wouldn't hurt her. It would vindicate her. It would prove she was right about a woman she was right about. I think the truth is that if I tell her, then it's finished. Then it's not a hard decision I made for a decent reason. It's just a con I fell for. And she'd have to be very kind to me about it. And I don't think I could stand that. And people always want to know, would you do it differently? And that's the part I really can't answer. Because when I run it back, I get to that same Saturday in her kitchen, with her saying she was being very difficult back then. And I still don't see the version where I say to my 74-year-old mother, no, you can't come. I don't see it. Even now. Even knowing. Which probably tells you everything about why she picked me. So that's it. That's the whole thing. There's no ending. My mother's gone and I can't ask her. My wife's in the next room and I can't tell her. And I've got 3 letters in a drawer that answer a question nobody's going to ask me. I don't have a lesson. People always want one. I don't have one. I just wanted it to exist somewhere outside my own head for a minute.
Man, I told you at the start I didn't know what I'd have done. I still don't. And I've been sitting here for a while now trying to land somewhere, and I can't. Because here's the thing. I keep wanting to be angry at him. He heard what his mother said about his wife. He heard her not deny it, and he moved her in anyway. Part of me wants to say, come on. She told you who she was, right there in that kitchen. And then I think about being 44 years old, on the phone with your 74-year-old mother, and her saying, I don't have anywhere else to go. And I honestly don't know if I'd have been any braver than he was. The letters, though. 3 letters in a box. A room already cleared out, 2 states away. And what gets me isn't even that she lied. It's what he figured out about why. She picked the kid who couldn't say no. 60 years of knowing her own children, and she knew exactly which door would open. That's a hard thing to learn about your mother after she's gone, and there's nowhere to put it. He can't ask her. He can't tell his wife. So it just sits in a drawer. But you know what I actually keep coming back to? It's not the letters at all. It's that hum he described. That dumb 11 o'clock at night talking about nothing. He said it's been 5 years and it hasn't come back. I think most people don't know that's the thing they'd miss. You think a marriage ends with the door slamming. Sometimes it just gets quiet. I don't have a lesson here. Greg didn't want one, and honestly, I don't think there is one. Sometimes you do a decent thing for a decent reason, and it takes something from you anyway. And nobody tells you the price until years later. If you're listening to this and you've got a version of it, the parent, the partner, the choice with no good answer, I don't have advice. But I hope somebody's talking to you about nothing at 11 at night. That's not a small thing. I didn't know that until tonight. This has been Michael Tells. Take care of each other. I'll see you next time.